Joining me right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline to talk more Eagles, Turron Davenport of USA Today Eagles Wire, one of the best follows on Twitter. Follow him online at @TDavenportNFL. Turron, how you doing on this Tuesday?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing good. We first have to start out with the story that really is taken away from the Eagles' great season and what's going on the field in this offseason, which is this whole White House uninviting the Eagles. And I started out the show, Turron, by saying that to me, when you look at the Eagles, so many times we look at the negatives of the athletes in the world. So many times we hear about the Pac-Man Jones and the Vontaze Burficts, but this is a team of guys that really, in my mind, embody what is really this country supposed to be about. Guys from different backgrounds, from different points of view, who all unite for the same goal. And these guys do a lot of great stuff in the community.
Well, honestly, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm actually in the middle of doing an article about something going on this weekend with CF Charities and Rodney McLeod, as well as Trey Sullivan. And they're doing some things in order to help get some of the inner city youth, get them involved in going to the next level as far as their education is concerned. So there's some festivities going on this weekend with that, and that's just a small example of what all of the guys do. I mean, look at Carson Wentz's charity events, his softball game this past weekend. There's so many things that these guys do, but obviously it doesn't always fit the narrative that these NFL players are spoiled brats, and it goes against that, so it doesn't get the same attention from some of these media outlets that just focus on the negative, like you said.
This offseason, what has been the mood around this team since winning the Super Bowl? Because this is the first time this franchise has a Super Bowl championship. So what has the mood been around this team in terms of how things have been for them on and off the field?
I mean, honestly, they're still hungry to repeat. It's not something that's different as far as the underdog part of it or anything like that. They're ready to go. Their mood is to work harder, and that's what you see them doing. The guys are there at the facility, with the exception of two who they typically don't come at this time, but make no mistake about it, Darren Sproles, Michael Bennett, those guys are always ready to go when the season starts. So it's not really an issue, and it's just, these guys are ready to go. There's intensity at practice, so I think they'll be in good shape.
Also, Michael Bennett does live in Hawaii. I mean, you wouldn't want to leave Hawaii either, would you? I mean, come on, if you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean that's not exactly a place where anybody would want to walk away from. So I definitely understand where he's coming from there.
Turron, I was saying in the last hour, and obviously when we say stuff like this, it's got to be cautious because everything looks good on paper, but one could argue that the 2018 Eagles may actually be better going into the season than 2017 because you go from Vinny Curry to Michael Bennett, from Bo Allen to Haloti Ngata. You have Sidney Jones coming in this year. A healthy Darren Sproles is always a bonus as well. Could this version of the Eagles actually be better than last year?
Yeah, I think they could be better. One thing that we do have to look at is not having Corey Graham as the number 3 safety. I think Sullivan brings youth that could definitely help, and he'll be a force against the run. The other thing you got to look at is not having Patrick Robinson, which, that's something where Sidney Jones, you mentioned, and also Jalen Mills, they should be able to fill in, Devontae Bosby as well. So there's some things that have been taken away from them. A tight end, Trey Burton, you got the rookie Dallas Goedert coming in. So it's going to be a different team, but I think they'll be just as explosive. I think they'll be able to do a lot of the similar things that they did last year. One of the things that you have to mention is just the loss on the coaching staff side of things. I think John DeFilippo's role is greatly underrated, and he's someone who was crucial. He was a very big part of Nick Foles' turnaround in that quick amount of time. So you have to look at those things. But, if I were a fan, I would say, I got trust in Mike Groh. I think fans need to trust him. He's an excellent offensive mind. He helps all of the positions see things through the eyes of a quarterback. That's one of the things the receivers talked about last year. So he'll be a good addition. And then you look at Gunter Brewer. I think he's an outstanding coach as well as far as with the wide receivers. So they're in a good place. I wouldn't be surprised if they, are in the run for a second Super Bowl championship. But we'll see how it works. I mean, we're just talking about everything on paper right now.
Talk a little bit about who Mike Groh is. I think he's not a guy that a lot of people are familiar with. I think some people may know he is the son of Al Groh, the former longtime NFL and college coach. But tell the audience a little bit about who Mike Groh is and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people don't realize Mike Groh, he was a college quarterback there at Virginia. He set some records, and he had opportunities in the NFL. He had a cup of coffee with the Ravens. And, he's coached all receivers, in the NFL. But you look at some of the guys he worked with. Alshon in Chicago had his best year. Kenny Britt had his best year in L.A. where he was a pass game coordinator. So you're getting a guy who comes in who has a great understanding of the passing game. He actually helped put together that play that Zach Ertz scored the winning touchdown on the Super Bowl where he ran that slant. That was a composition of various plays that he and Frank Reich put together. So he's someone that, obviously has a receiver background, but he's definitely capable of being an offensive coordinator. That's what he was when he was at Virginia about 10 years ago. So, you're getting a guy who has the understanding of a quarterback as far as, how a quarterback thinks, because that's a position that he played, and that's something that Carson Wentz told me that he likes about Mike Groh. So that's something that, you have to look at. And I think they're like I said, they're in a good situation with him as the coordinator, and it's just going to take time for the everything to kind of come together. But once it does, they're going to be really good.
Turron Davenport joining us here on the Boardwalk On the Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. You mentioned Carson Wentz. We've seen some of the video. He looks pretty mobile for a guy who just shredded up his knee just back in December. What is his progress right now in the rehab?
Yeah, he's definitely progressing well. Right now, it's a mental thing where he's trying to get used to having that brace on his knee. It's a bulky brace, so he's trying to get used to moving with that and just having that limitation there. But when he's not booting, rolling out, and things like that, you really can't even tell that he was hurt. You see him in the catch and throw drills. You see him planning and driving the football down the field. He looks really good there, but it's just you see a little hitch in his step when he boots, when they roll him out and he makes throws on the run, which is understandable. But I think he's in an outstanding place. He's not taking part in team or 7-on-7, but he's definitely getting involved in the other parts, the individual parts of the practices.
I know it's a different type of quarterback, but I remember back when Tom Brady got his leg shredded up. And when he came back that first year after the injury, it took him a few weeks to really acclimate back to being the Tom Brady that we knew before the injury. And ironically, now years later, it's the best Tom Brady we've ever seen, arguably. Could that be a similar mold for Carson Wentz, that it may take him, a few weeks to really, get his bearings under him, and he may come back better than he was before?
Yeah, I think it's going to take him a little bit. He will be back in good shape at some point, but just given the nature of how he plays the game, the way he self-sacrifices, he's someone that will, fight for that extra yard at the end of a run. But he has started to learn to slide. So you see him doing that, and you see him stepping out of bounds. He's not taking as many big hits, but it is going to take a bit because so much of his game is not only based upon delivering the football from the pocket, it's based upon being able to move within the pocket and extend plays, and that's something that really made that offense go to the next level, not only in the red zone, but in third down situations as well. They were one of the top teams, and a lot of that came from Wentz's ability to extend the play, and also his receivers and tight ends, their ability to move with him and make themselves come open as he did that. So these are things that's going to take a little bit of time for him to be able to get back to doing. So I wouldn't expect him to, murder the league, so to speak, when he comes right back. But eventually he'll get back to those ways of, having week to week of outstanding football.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've heard actually some people are asking, too early preseason MVP favorites, and some people are already pointing to Wentz, saying that, he may be an MVP candidate this year. I don't know if that's fair to say for 2018, but definitely after what he showed in 2017, I think 2019 could be a massive season with him now that he has an entire offseason of being healthy under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be something where in the future you're really going to start seeing him back to form. But, I mean, even an 80 or 85% of Carson Wentz is better than an awful lot of quarterbacks in the league. So the Eagles are still in a good place.
Turron, you mentioned the wide receivers. One of the additions this offseason was Mike Wallace, basically replacing Torrey Smith's slot on the roster. What does he bring to the table, and is he an upgrade over Torrey Smith?
Yeah, Mike Wallace is a speedy receiver that can still catch the slant and take it to the house. He's someone that they could use on jet sweeps, and he's still a guy that could stretch the football field. Just a couple years ago, he had a 1,000-yard season, I believe it was, with the Ravens. So, I would say he's an upgrade. He's a more reliable pass catcher than Smith was. We know the struggles he had earlier in the year till he came around later, and came through in the playoffs with some outstanding catches. But I think Wallace is an upgrade, and he'll be good for this offense. And like I said, he stretches that field. He's still got that speed. He has those jets, and he could get going.
How do you think the Eagles are going to adjust? No Trey Burton, no Brent Selleck. So you lose Selleck, who's that pass blocker on the edge on the opposite side from Zach Ertz. So how do the Eagles adjust without Brent Selleck? And is Dallas Goedert going to be an ample replacement for Trey Burton?
Yeah, I mean, there's different things you could do. I mean, it's not all about, being that guy who can get his hands in there on somebody's chest plate and drive him to the ground. Sometimes it's good enough to just get in the way, right? And these guys that they have there, on average, 245 to 256 pounds, that's more than big enough to get in the way and slow down someone who's trying to get to the running back as he hits that alley to get upfield. So I think there's going to be a lot more of outside zone runs and those type of things where you have Jason Kelsey pulling, you could have Lane Johnson pulling and getting out there as well. Any of their guys are capable of doing it. All of them up front are athletes, even Stefan Wisniewski. So you could get them out in space and allow them to make those blocks that you may normally have tight ends do. So that's not something to be overly concerned about. As far as Goddard stepping in for Trey Burton, listen, Trey Burton was a really good pass catcher. He's a former receiver. He's someone who, was very reliable. He was where he needed to be, when he needed to be there. And when the ball was delivered to him, he caught it 9.5 out of 10 times. Now, Goddard is a younger player, but one thing I like about him is he knows how to use his size to get open. You see him leaning into a defender and then breaking out to the direction that he needs to go. A lot like Jason Witten and how he runs his routes, to be honest with you. So once he gets into the better understanding of the playbook and knowing where he needs to be and getting there consistently, he could be a guy that could definitely fill in well for Trey Burton. But you'll also see more 3 receiver sets, so they'll still use that as an opportunity to fill in for Burton as well.
Yeah, what a shame the Dallas Cowboys couldn't draft a guy named Dallas. What a shame for them, right?
Hey, the Eagles jumped up. Howie Roseman saw it. He jumped up and went ahead of them and got the guy they needed.
Staying on the offense, I wanted to ask you about the running backs because it's turning out to be a pretty crowded backfield. We already have guys coming back like Corey Clement, Jay Ajayi, Wendell Smallwood, Donnell Pumphrey coming off of being on basically bench for the entire season, like a redshirt freshman. And then you have bringing in Josh Adams, unrestricted free agent, bringing in Matt Jones. I mean, how is this running back situation going to shake out? That's a lot of bodies to get touches.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to shake out fine as far as the cream rising to the top. Jay Ajayi will probably get the bulk of the charges, the bulk of the carries, but don't be surprised if you see Corey Clement start to get more and more as the season goes on. I think Darren Sproles will get touches running the football as well as catching it out of the backfield. You'll see them get, I think Donnell Pumphrey is going to be incorporated into the program as well, just more as a matchup guy that they'll use on some outside runs, stretch plays, but they'll mostly motion him out the backfield and let him work against linebackers. So you'll see different roles. I think Clement and Ajayi will have a similar role. Pumphrey and Sproles will have a similar one, but you'll see more carries for Sproles. And if Smallwood is there, I still think he's a part of the picture as well. And when I look at Smallwood, I think he's probably, the guy that hits the hole. Well, that's tough because Corey Clement hits him really well too. But when he's healthy, Smallwood is a guy that definitely can give them the offense that they need and the explosiveness that they need at the running back position.
I'm glad you mentioned Corey Clement because I love his story. The fact that he was an undrafted guy. Deuce Stanley tells him, listen, I need you to work on X, Y, and Z. He did everything asked of him. He makes the team. And then he has 100 receiving yards in the Super Bowl. I mean, how much better can this guy get considering you saw how hard he worked just to make the team? I can only imagine what kind of work ethic he's been putting in this offseason to get even better.
Yeah, he's continuing to get better, and he kind of changed his weight program. He came back a bit bigger, but he said he wants to get down to about 216, which would be his playing weight. But yeah, I mean, it's remarkable what he was able to do as far as the improvements that he made. He got better and better as far as his explosiveness as a running back, his ability to hit holes. Then he got better as far as a blocker. That gave him more third down opportunities. And with that came more pass catching opportunities. And the guy made some outstanding catches. That catch in the Super Bowl was a great catch. And even, I think it was week 6 against the Redskins. I think it was week 6, but the Redskins game, it was later in the year. It was week 12, I want to say, against the Redskins, the Monday night game. And he had that catch in the corner of the end zone, outstanding catch. And the guy showed himself to improve in every aspect of football. So I would expect him to come back even better this year now that he has a year under his belt and that confidence of knowing that he could do it on a consistent basis. So watch out for Corey Clement. He could even be the back of the future for them. I mean, Jay Ajayi is going to be a free agent after this year. Who knows what's going to happen, with him, whether or not he's brought back on a big deal or not. But I wouldn't be surprised if Clement's their guy.
Turron Davenport joining us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Turron, a couple more for you before I let you go, and always appreciate the time that you give us. On the defensive end, we see that Michael Kendricks was let go, salary cap casualty, saving the Eagles about $6 million. But then Paul Warlow goes down with his injury. Do you think the Eagles are okay with what they got in-house right now at linebacker, or do you think they should sign another guy or two just to add some depth going into the preseason?
Yeah, I mean, you still have Corey Nelson in place, and he's a guy that was signed to compete for a starting job anyway. So you have him. You have Nate Jerry, a guy that, it fits the hybrid mold that they want at weak side linebacker, and then not to mention Kyle Magruder-Hill. They're in fine shape. And then Joe Walker is a guy that could be their backup as a middle linebacker, all of which have excelled on special teams. So they'll find a double role for them. So I don't think they need to go out and get anybody. Navarro Bowman is out there, but at this point, I wouldn't go get him. I think they're in good shape with what they have. So there shouldn't be any concerns on the linebacking unit. It was just a matter of just having 3 really good linebackers, and one of them, unfortunately, was getting paid a lot more money in relation to his position, what he was doing as far as being pulled off the field in their nickel and sub packages. So it's just the way it goes.
Looking overall at the Eagles heading into next season, Doug Peterson has basically become almost like a folklore hero in this town because he's the coach who got the Super Bowl. He's the guy who, approved the Philly special play, all these little things that go along with him. How has Doug Peterson evolved from when he got hired to now that you have seen?
I think for me, he's just gotten more and more confident. He's gotten better in his ability to deal with the media as far as handling press conferences and just not only handling them, but actually running them. That's something that I think he's gotten really good at. And, just as far as his maturity as a coach, it just continues to go with the play calling. And I think in this case, you're seeing him still be as aggressive as he was, but you see things being executed. And I think he's really settling in as a leader of the team, and you just had the group continuing to come together. So it's an excellent job by Peterson and everybody in place as leaders. And that's one of the things that he does that's remarkable. He allows his guys to lead. You know, he allows the guys who are in place to you know, he doesn't get in the way of that. He allows them to shine at what they do best. And that's something you see with Malcolm Jenkins, Chris Long, Jason Peters, Carson, all the guys, you know, even the coaching staff. You know, he's not afraid to allow someone else to get credit for doing something good, right? He gives, we talk about Mike Groh and how he helped put together that play that Ertz scored on. Well, that's a collaborative effort, and he's not the guy that's the dictator that says it's only my way or nothing else. That play was added a few days before the game, right? So here we are, you know, he's opening up and encouraging other people to help. And that's something that really is it takes a lot of confidence. It takes maturity to be able to do that. But when you do that, something like a Super Bowl championship happens.
Real quick, how much of that also has to do with Doug's background as a longtime backup quarterback, you know, being part of quarterback rooms and being part of the collaborative effort on game day? You know, do you think that his background of playing in that, you know, team environment, of having to be part of helping to make a team better, help mold him into the guy that he is today?
No doubt about it. He learned to understand that the importance of other people's input. I think that had a lot to do with it.
Follow him on Twitter at @TDavenport_NFL. Turron Davenport, USA Today, Eagles Wire, joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Turron, appreciate the time as always, and don't worry, summer will be here soon enough, so you'll have to crank up the AC soon.
Yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate you having me on. Take care.